This week, India will set out to do what Russia couldn't and crack a moon mystery. It'll attempt to become the first country to land a spacecraft on the unexplored lunar South Pole. Our resident astrophysicist Sarah Webb joins us from Melbourne. Sarah, good evening. Why is everyone so focused on this particular area?
It's an excellent question, and I think a lot of people are surprised when they hear lunar South Pole because it's not what you expect. However, from recent studies over the last couple of decades, we've realised that the lunar southern pole holds the key for us discovering liquid and ice water on the moon. So hidden away in those big craters that you can see there, we think there's massive deposits of frozen water ice, which could be potentially very interesting not only for research but for future use on the moon as well.
What kind of usage? What makes it just so valuable?
So, of course, if we think we're going to try get humans up there living and working for research purposes, we need water to survive for ourselves and also for growing food. So that's one very important reason. Another important reason, though, is that we potentially could use that water and split it into its hydrogen and its oxygen and use that for potential rocket fuel in the future, which would be incredibly helpful for us being able to explore the rest of the solar system.
So India's quite brave going back there just after Russia's aborted attempt. What are the unique challenges with exploring the South Pole?
So the South Pole is very different to the rest of the moon. As you can see, there's so many different craters, and I think we don't get a clear understanding from the images just how dangerous it can be. There's one particular crater on the southern pole of the moon where from the trough to the top of the crater is about the height of Mount Everest. It's absolutely enormous. So finding a safe landing site is very, very challenging indeed, and we're seeing that challenge play out in real time here.
Sarah, can anyone have a go? Are there rules around who can go looking and what they can do once they're there?
So in theory, anyone, any nation can send objects to space. Each nation has their rules over when you're allowed to launch and what you're allowed to launch. But as far as getting to the moon, once you're there, it really is a bit of a wild west. So there are some treaties, some of the space treaties that we have from the 60s and the 70s. And then we, of course, have our new Artemis Accords. However, not all nations have signed on to them. So it is a bit of a grey area. And the idea is that everybody will play kindly with each other.
This is a very important day for India's space team. Where does India stand in the space race overall when you compare it to powerhouses like, say, America or China, and if we ignore what just happened, Russia?
Yes. So they are fairly new to this game. They've only been sending missions to the moon since their first one arrived there at 2008. That was an orbiter explorer. And this will be their third orbiter and now their first rover. If they are able to achieve what we call a soft touchdown, they will be the fourth country in the world to have achieved this, right behind the US, the former Soviet Union, and China as well. So they are very new to the game, but they're doing excellent work.
We'll be watching intently. Sarah Webb, thank you for your insights tonight.
Thank you.
There's a new surge of countries and private companies racing to the moon to find water, a critical resource for use on future lunar missions. Water is the most sought-after commodity for sustainable life and exploration on the surface of the moon. Scientists first detected water ice on the moon's south pole in 2008, but new research estimates up to 300 billion tons of water could be tucked away in lunar soil. So tomorrow, India could become the first nation to successfully land an unmanned spacecraft on the moon's south pole just days after Russia's failed lunar mission. The U.S. plans a launch to that same region of the moon, but that is not slated till November. So let's bring in now space communications specialist Alexandra Doughton. Alexandra, thank you so much for giving us some of your time. First of all, why is there this race to be the first to the moon's south pole specifically? What will that signify?
Well, we know that people have landed on the moon and that there's been countless missions to the moon. So the South Pole is really a new area. And the reason it's so exciting is because it's an area of extremes. There are some really tall mountains and deep craters in the lunar South Pole, which make it a really unique environment. There are areas that are permanently shadowed and areas that receive almost constant sunlight. So these are complete extremes that could provide an entire new area for research in regards to the moon.
All right, so Alexander, compare this South Pole of the moon. What would be the closest comparison here on Earth? Is there anything that would kind of compare?
I think that the closest comparison would have to be the South Pole of Earth, or maybe the North Pole of Earth as well, which also we see these extremes with light as well. But we know that there are a lot of scientific bases in Antarctica because of all of this exciting science that can happen there. And similarly, it's going to be a great area of scientific research on the South Pole of the moon.
All right, so we talked about water when we introed this. How important is this race to find water?
It's huge. So as you mentioned, in 2008 is when interest in the lunar South Pole really started and water was identified. And so in these permanently shadowed areas, in these craters on the lunar South Pole, water ice has been identified. Now, this water can be used in future missions for drinking, for cooling equipment, and potentially someday for rocket fuel for traveling further into the solar system.
All right, Alexandra, I have to ask you, because you're here, is there a possibility one day people can live on the moon?
Absolutely, and it's going to happen in our lifetime.
All right. It's as simple as that? In our lifetime?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm confident.
Alexandra Doughton, great speaking with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.
Well, just talking about India, it could make history today with its mission to be the first country to land on the south part of the moon, closest to the South Pole. Let's take a look at these images, which were taken by India's Vikram robotic lander 3 days ago as it neared Earth's satellite. Only 3 nations have ever touched down on the moon, and none have made it to the South Pole. Sky's India reporter Neville Lazarus joins me now from India. Hopes are high, Neville.
Exactly. There is a lot of excitement, but also a lot of anxiety out here because the predecessor, the Chandrayan-3, crashed. The mission failed. It crashed into the surface of the moon 4 years ago. But there is a lot of excitement now. There's a surge in national pride. If this is a success, it will make India the 4th country in the world after the United States, the erstwhile Soviet Union, and China to land a spacecraft on the moon, but the first on the southern side of the moon, which is of great interest for scientists because of water ice prevalent out there, which gives a big boost to the scientific community and the explorers for future missions. There are possibilities of a station on the moon, which will then help propel other missions after that. But there is a lot of constraints in terms of India's missions to space, primarily because of finances. Jane, just to give you an example, this Chandrayaan mission has costed $74 million. The big Bollywood blockbuster Interstellar costed $165 million, double this amount. Gravity, another big Bollywood film, $100 million. So India is trying to make that balance between spending on space missions like these and other programs of poverty alleviation, health, education, etc. But a big boost if India manages a success in this landing, and a lot of excitement around here in India today.